What's going on, guys? Jackson here, host of the Court is in Session podcast, part of the Vendetta Sports Media Podcasting Network. As always, if you're watching us on YouTube and you enjoy today's episode, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell so you can be notified whenever a new episode of the podcast drops. Or if you're listening to us on Spotify, then go ahead and leave that 5-star review for us. Would greatly appreciate it. Today we have the Diamond himself, Matt, joining us. Matt is a part of our Vendetta crew covering the NBA. You can find him here if you look at the bottom of your screen. That is his Twitter tag going across down there. But he also does work for Hot Hoops, which is the SB Nation affiliate for the Miami Heat. Big Miami Heat fan. I see the flag in the background. He's got his Heat jersey on, and he also does some work. There you go. And he also does work for MWCconnection.com. That is for the Mountain West Conference. Matt, how are you doing today, man?
I'm doing good, man. I'm doing good. How about yourself?
I'm just happy to finally to be back doing the podcast. Honestly, I've missed doing it. There was like a bit of a lull with NBA news. Then it was like all the news kind of came out at once because there was the Donovan Mitchell trade. And I was like, oh man, I really need to do a podcast. But it's like I had a lot of personal stuff, a lot of business stuff that was going on at that time. So I couldn't get to record, and then I had to just like quickly throw together some predictions that are 100% not coming true right now. I have been wrong.
Tell me about it. I'm already wrong on like half of them.
Like 1 week through, it is like 80% of all my predictions are just completely down the toilet, and I'm like, should I be doing this potentially for a living? But it is what it is. It's only 1 week, but as with most things, as with most media members, we are going to overreact to just 1 week, maximum 5 amount of games out of an 82 game schedule. We are going to figure out the entire NBA season from just these 5 games. But I want to lead off the podcast kind of talking with something that we did. I participated, you took the lead on this, but we created our Vendetta power rankings going into the NBA season. And I just wanted, as the author of the post, the guy that had to calculate wherever all the teams sat. So for those of you that are watching or listening, go to vendettasportsmedia.com to read the post. I would honestly suggest bringing it up as we're talking about it. It'd make things a lot easier. There'll be a link down in the description to that exact post, as well as to Matt's author page for Vendetta. But Matt, I just wanted to get like some initial reactions from what you thought of all of us here at Vendetta that submitted answers to cover the NBA. What did you think? Were there some surprises? Were you surprised to see people high on a team, low on a team, or was everyone pretty much on the same page for where teams, as far as you think, should be in the hierarchy of the NBA going into the season?
I mean, most of it was like, at least from my own perspective, like where I had teams ranked relative to where they finished. It was pretty close. There wasn't a lot of variance, but there was a few that were really, really high on a team, and there were a few that were particularly low on a team. Like the team that had a lot of variance, and I'm sure we'll be talking about them at some point in a deeper scope, was the Timberwolves.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Jack Saban, who is one of the writers for the site, he does work with like Major League Baseball. He's done it with football too. He's a big Phillies fan. Phillies won the World Series, et cetera, et cetera. He had the Timberwolves ranked 7th, but then you and Trey had him 17th heading into the season. So that was like there was a lot of variance with that particular pick. There was another one. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, I've got it pulled up.
Trey had the Kings 15th, and that was a lot higher than I think you. It was higher than me by a considerable amount. He had him 15th. I had him 22nd. You had him 26th.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think if there's any others. Chickster had the Hornets at 17. Anthony Miranda, who also does a lot of like gaming and wrestling work, he had him 25th. I'm trying to think of just trying to see if any others like just pop off. I mean, collectively, I was a little surprised that most of us were a little bit down on the Suns from last year after they won 64 games, even though they didn't have any like major changes in the offseason per se.
Yeah.
And they went from like the top 10, they were heading into the playoffs this last year. They were looked at as like almost not guaranteed, but they were the heavy finals favorite, at least to make it out of the Western
Mhm.
Conference. Of course, they have to flame out in the second round to Dallas, capped off by one of the worst game sevens I've ever seen. And now, after the tumultuous offseason, of course, with the ownership, and then obviously with DeAndre Ayton coming back, all those kind of weird media day comments where he was
Mhm.
like, "Well, yeah, I haven't talked to Monty at all." Like all of that, just kind of weird vibes around that team.
Yeah.
Like we were all a little bit lower on him. I thought I was going to be one of the only ones who was low on him. I had him seventh. They finished eighth. No one had him
Yeah.
higher than seventh, and so that was a little interesting to me. This kind of a similar thing happened with the Nets. I mean, the Nets were 10th on our power rankings. Although if you look at this 4 or 5 game sample right now, justifiably so, it's not
Yes.
it's not really what I was expecting them to be. A little bit better, of course. 4 or 5 games out of an 82 game schedule, obviously, you can't really take
Yeah.
that into account. But like,
Yeah.
I thought they were. I was surprised that they were 10. I thought people were going to rank them higher. For some reason, it was just a gut feeling. I really have no justification behind it. Um, People were down on the Bulls. I mean, I was down on the Bulls heading into this year. Trey had
Yeah.
him 20. Chickster had him 20th. I had him 17th. They were 17th overall.
Yeah,
Um,
they're just
Ranking.
riddled with injuries. And then
Right. That
that's
was
what stopped
right.
me from putting them
Right.
any higher. I had them 15 and I was cool with I'm cool with them being at 17 at least going into the season cuz they are missing so many core
Mhm.
players and they still are to an extent we don't know everything. Is Levine, he's back now, right though?
Yeah,
Levine's
he
back.
made his
Yeah,
debut. I think
okay.
Saturday.
Yeah, okay.
He's back.
But they're still but yeah, they were just riddled with injuries coming into the season. So I didn't trust them being in like the upper tier of the NBA where they could potentially be if they were 100% healthy, but injuries derailed their season last season and I didn't see anything really changing coming into the start of this season. But if we keep doing this, maybe they rise up, maybe they don't once they get healthy. I have
Yeah.
no idea.
I was also a little. I mean,
I
actually, I
was
can't say I was too surprised by this. I
I was
thought a few people were going to have Boston over Milwaukee. Just, I mean, of course,
yeah.
obviously, that was around when everything happened with Joe Mazzulla and Ime Udoka and all that situation, like all of that situation to unpack. But I was just thinking, like, I'm my guess, my educated guess was at least one person was going to have him above Milwaukee because
Mhm.
um, that they made the finals last year and they beat Milwaukee in 7 games, albeit
Yeah.
without Middleton. But
Yeah, and
um,
that's what I was gonna say. It went to 7, and they didn't have Chris Middleton. I think if Chris Middleton is there for Milwaukee, if anything, Milwaukee wins that series in 7,
right,
and then we get the matchup that everybody kind of thought going through the playoffs was going to be, which was Golden State and Milwaukee, and that's what a lot of
mm-hmm.
people are kind of picking this year. Also, I feel like at least that's what I picked. At least
Yeah,
that's gonna be
I had that too.
that's gonna be the matchup. But I think once Middleton comes back, yeah, the Bucks are going to be the team to beat out east. Uh,
That's one of the better hypothetical finals matchups.
it would be
Like just
fantastic.
like even not even just this year, but like even in recent years,
Hmm.
like just with how how do I like just the Giannis versus Curry trade
It's
and
two
play.
completely different play styles and
Right.
two teams that are excellent NBA teams have two of the best players in the world leading those teams, but
Hmm.
their construction and how they function are complete polar opposites of how to
Right.
succeed in the NBA or what the team makeup and who your leader is. They're complete opposites, and I think that would make such an intriguing
Right.
matchup. And because I also do think that the Bucks at least might have it. I don't know. I still think the Bucks would have an edge in that series, but it would just be it is a fun hypothetical series, and I would be cool if that was the NBA Finals. But obviously, it's going to be the Grizzlies and the Heat in the NBA Finals. I mean,
Yeah,
let's
obviously.
be real
Obviously.
about this. But yeah, and I'll say my biggest my biggest disappointment, but I'm still like fairly high on them, not in the sense that they're going to be good, but I think they're going to be better than what most people realize, even though they have not won a single game this year, was the Orlando Magic. I had them as high as a 18, I think, in my personal rankings, and they are currently winless. But Banchero is balling. They just need to figure out how to
Yeah.
win. They're a young team. They'll figure out how to win. They'll get their first win. The wins will start rolling after that.
Yeah, Bol man, getting what 15, 20 minutes a night now.
Hey,
He's looking like I didn't expect him to get a whole lot of playing time to begin the year, but like he's like he looks spry. He looks juiced. I mean, I've seen a few clips of him. I haven't watched a whole lot of Magic, admittedly, but like he's handling the ball well. Like he's getting into the paint. He's blocking almost any shot in sight. He's averaging like what 2, 3, 4
yeah,
blocks a game.
he's hitting
Like
threes.
like he's off to a good start. I mean, of course, it's Bull, so we all want him to be
Yeah.
like a successful player. But like, yeah, Ben Caro, he looks like a number one overall pick. I mean, Franz is picked up almost right where he left off. A little bit of a slower start. I mean, Cole Anthony, when I don't know if he was injured, but he missed like a game or two. But he's looked good. Like that, yeah. 0-5, but like a hopeful 0-5. Like
Yeah.
I think they're going to squeak out wins against teams that like you catch them on a bad night, like on a back to back or something like. And of course, Orlando's not necessarily a great place to play energy wise, just because it's Orlando.
Yeah, not known as a basketball town. That is
Right.
that is for sure. Um, but anything else from the power rankings? I will say this: I was fairly surprised with how uniform we were, outside of just
Right.
a small handful here and there. Specifically, felt like me, but it felt like we were all like fairly close, within 2 to 3 rankings of each other when it was all said and done, and the averages were totaled together. I don't
Right.
know if
I would
that's just
agree with that.
we're on the same wavelength, and it's just we're sharing like the same single brain cell that's guiding our NBA takes, or what, or why that is. But that was interesting to see, again, outside of like the one or two um discrepancies there.
I
But
shall point out though, you might be looking like the smartest man in the room when you have the Lakers 23rd, and the
yes,
rest of us don't have them
I
below 20.
I did think about that one, and 100% we're going to ignore the fact that I'm probably too high on the Orlando Magic, and if anything, I didn't put the Lakers low enough.
Yeah,
If it
listen. In hindsight's 2020. I wish I would have done the same.
Yeah, but yeah, that was just a strange gut feeling that I had. But I didn't think they were going to be as bad as what they are
I
right
don't think.
now.
Yeah, I don't think many like this bad.
Yeah,
Like, did you
and
see the Pat Bev comments after last night's
yes,
win
yes,
with the
where
shooting?
yeah, he's like, we're averaging 20%, we shot 26%, we're doing better.
Yeah, I mean he's not wrong, but
He's
like
he
it's
is
still
not
very
wrong.
funny.
He's
But yeah, no,
That whole team
I
is
was I had a little bit of higher hopes. I didn't think they were going to be this bad either.
yeah, and
Like I like bringing in Pat Bev. I like bringing in Lonnie Walker just as like a flyer. I like the Toscano Anderson acquisition.
mhm,
Thomas Bryant's a guy who you don't hear about. You didn't hear a lot about in Washington, but when he was on the floor and healthy, he was like a productive like player for them. Like I didn't hate some of these acquisitions, but like it just hasn't obviously gone according to plan. Again, when you have that poor of shooting, it makes the spacing and everything so much more difficult. Um, like the Russell Westbrook 2-for-1 blew up. I know I
mhm,
had a tweet about that a little bit. Um, I mean, Anthony Davis has been like actually really like that's amid the Lakers' bad start. Anthony Davis has actually
yes,
played really well,
he
but he
he
just
has.
re-aggravated a back
Hmm.
injury last night, and so he might be out for some time. I don't know if there's been an official determination of that yet, but
Yeah,
like
and
he's actually been playing like well enough. Like last year, I remember the start of the season, he's got out to some like wretched start, and he was getting clowned like left and right.
yep.
And he's actually, I don't have his numbers in front of me, but he's putting up like good numbers and he's looking good when he's like on the floor. But again, now that he's at least presumably injured for who knows how long, maybe he doesn't miss a game at all. We don't know how that whole situation will fall out, but it's like, man, like it's been a tough watch. Like
Uh,
I've sat down and watched a couple of their games.
yes,
It's been a tough watch.
it has been a very tough watch, and mostly because LA being as big of a market as it is and having LeBron on it, they are going to be on national TV
Right.
almost every single night that there is a Lakers game or that TNT or ESPN, whoever owns the rights to broadcast the games that night, they're going to be in front of us. And first off, I want to say I have to root for the Lakers to turn this season around, because if they don't get out of the lottery, then Memphis does not get that pick.
Right.
Memphis did not
Yep.
get it last year, and I desperately want that pick. I want that.
Is this the last year for the pick protection for Memphis?
I I think it is. I'm not entirely sure what the pick turns into if it's not conveyed this year, because it's technically
Okay.
from New Orleans, from
Right,
the
right. It's the New
Valanciunas and
Orleans
Adams
Roll.
trade.
Right.
So the pick is technically the Lakers pick, but when it was traded from New Orleans to Memphis, it was traded as a protected pick.
Right.
So, and it's a lottery protected pick. So, as long as it's in the lottery or the top 10, I think, then it stays with New Orleans. But if it gets outside of the top 10 or the lottery, whichever one it is, then that pick belongs to Memphis.
Right.
And Memphis would love to have that pick, because if there's any potential trade in the future, then they have an extra first round pick in their back pocket. I need to
Right.
look up. I need to know what that turns into
Here,
if it's
let me
not
pull it up.
conveyed this year. But then you brought up the shooting problem, and I don't.
It's terrible.
It's terrible. I don't get LeBron's best teams that he's ever been on in the modern NBA era has been teams that can shoot the ball, to shoot the three. You surround LeBron with shooters, and you just let LeBron do his thing. You're going to succeed. But then Rob Pelinka decides he's going to do the complete opposite. He's going to assemble a team of cheap veterans and Russell Westbrook who cannot shoot the ball. And that's a major problem. Or if they can shoot the ball, they are skinny, small guards who don't defend all too well. Shout out to Northeast Arkansas legend Austin Reeves, AR-15. Although he wants a different nickname. He doesn't want the AR-15 nickname anymore.
Understandable.
Understandable.
Current political climate.
But you would think the Lakers, specifically Rob Pelinka, would understand that 3-point shooting is so key for the success of this Lakers team, because that's how they won the championship in the bubble, is because you had legitimate 3-point shooters on that team, but then you also had Anthony Davis and LeBron and pretty much everyone else that were average 3-point shooters just decide that they were all going to be Steph Curry level with shooting the three. So that obviously helped, but 3-point shooting is the reason why they won that championship in the bubble.
Oh, and Anthony Davis
and
being
Anthony,
a top 10 player in the league.
yes, he was. Which Anthony Davis again was shooting amazing from three, hitting that.
Right.
There was one shot he hit the dagger like over Jokic in
Yeah.
the Nuggets
Yep.
series, and they were just unstoppable after that. The Nuggets there was no hope for them coming back, and they roll right into the finals, which I know is a sore spot for you. I'm sorry about that.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten over it by now.
If it
I have
means
my best friend's a Laker fan, so
if it means
he'd be
anything,
like, hey,
I was
October 11th, 2020. And it's just like,
Hey,
like, okay,
if it means anything, I love your guy Jimmy Butler. I've been a Jimmy Butler guy
oh yeah,
ever since he was in Chicago. Some of his early
Yeah.
days in Chicago. I have loved the way he plays the game of basketball. I think he's one of the most hilarious players in the game, the way that he interacts with his teammates. I love players that interact the way that he does. Especially is it Caleb Martin is the one he's always picking on?
Oh no, I mean, he last night after Caleb had 16, 8, and 3 with 4 steals and 7 of 8 shooting, kind of like coming off that 1-game suspension for tackling Koloko. He in the post game, he was like for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes. So he's like, all right, like Caleb told us to like just all he wanted to do was talk about Caleb. He's like, all right, yeah, Caleb, like just give the ball to Caleb and get out of the way. And then he was just like just saying like all this stuff about like Caleb. Like Caleb told us like we better like get back on defense or play defense, or else he's gonna like whoop our ass or something like that. Like, just saying like all like
Yeah.
this stuff, just hyping up Caleb the entire post game. But usually he's picking on like Max Struess.
Max Struess is the one I was
Like
thinking
he
of. Yeah.
him like the middle finger, like when they acknowledge each other, they just flip each other off. Like it's one of the funniest things. Like he'll pick on Bam from time to time when Goran was here. I mean, he and Goran were like this, and so like he'll pick on Goran. I'm thinking of trying to see if I mean he of course he and Tyler
Yeah,
every once in a while.
I was about to bring that up. I remember back from
Yeah,
the bubble, the two of them were cutting it up a
yeah,
lot in a lot of the interviews that were going on and anything. And apparently Rachel Nichols and Jimmy Butler were also cutting it up
yeah,
as well.
yeah, yeah.
Supposedly, don't sue us, Rachel Nichols. Anyway, so we'll go ahead and we'll transition this Heat talk into an update on what your Miami Heat have been up to this first week. And again, this is not our overreactions right now. We'll get to our overreactions here in a minute, where we get to act like the rest of the mainstream media, and we get to make outlandish claims 1 week into the season, and then forget about them next week, and as we talk about the same things but from a different angle. So your Heat, kind of a slow start, but I mean, personally, not too worried about them.
Yeah,
I want to know, is that which again, you're deep into Heat fandom, so like, what's your feeling? Some other Heat fans, how's Heat Nation feeling right now about the start of this year?
Well, yeah, it's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. They were 1-3 in their first 4 games. They played. They lost to Chicago. The Lonzo Ball lists, Zach LaVine lists Bulls at home. On opening night, they lose to Boston. They split 2 against Toronto at home. So they lost 3 of their first 4 at home. And then last night, we're recording this on Thursday, October 27th. They beat they're kicking off a 3-game West Coast road trip, and they beat the surging 4-0 or then 4-0 Portland Trailblazers, and they beat them by 21. But yeah, it's gotten off to a little bit of a slow start. Right now, they're 23rd in offense, 11 in defense. Uh, they haven't really found much. Surprisingly enough, they haven't really found their identity offensively yet. If that kind of makes sense. I mean, it's been a little sluggish. Like they're not moving a whole lot off the ball. It's been just a little bit of like it's been a little stagnant.
Yeah.
One problem that they had, they're not forcing turnovers. They're not getting out in the fast break. They're getting outpaced in transition. That's been a problem. Teams have been outpacing them, and they just haven't taken advantage enough in transition over these first few games. I mean, they've been all right defensively, but like it's been like a good, not great type of a deal. The rebounding has been a sore spot. I've talked about this in other spaces before, but the rebounding has been a little bit of an issue at times just because of how small they are. Specifically, since they're starting Caleb Martin, who's 6'5", 6'6" at the 4 spot, and they have Bam Adebayo, who's 6'8", 6'9" at the center spot. I mean, Bam's been the center for what? This is his 3rd year,
Yeah.
entering his like 3rd full season as starting. That's no, either 3rd or 4th. I'm losing track of my years here.
Happens to the
But
best of us.
regardless, I mean, they're a small team, but then when one of the hottest topics right now in Heatland is behind Bam. Like Dwayne Dedman has been virtually unplayable through the first 5 games. I mean, Dedman was good when we signed him in 2021. He was kind of, I think he got traded to Detroit, got waived at the beginning of the season, only played like 19 games with Miami that season, but he was like a really impactful offensive rebounder, kind of like a good glue guy that will give you 15 to 20 minutes on any given night. And these last couple of years, specifically right now, he looks virtually unplayable. And then Heat fans have been calling for the rookie Nikola Jovic, who's this kind of playmaking, 6'10", 6'11", like just European player who was a very good playmaker when he was in Europe. He played in Europe over this last year. He's 19 years old. There was reports, or I mean, he said in a post-game interview after I think their first or second game that, or no, it was during preseason that he hasn't even graduated high school yet. Surprisingly enough, and he's playing NBA basketball, and he got his
Yeah.
first action last night. But it's been a little bit of a slow start. I mean, I think 14 when I looked at it, 14 of their first 24 games, including one against your Grizz, are against playoff teams, and so
Yeah.
it's a little bit of a rugged schedule to start, at least comparatively, I think, to other teams. And of course, these first 4 games that they struggled in were against playoff teams from last year. So yeah, it's been a little bit of a slow start. I mean, Heat fans, I'm not necessarily this way, but Heat fans love to just it's a lot of not overreaction, but it's a lot of like I guess you can call it overreaction for lack of a better term.
No,
Like they're pretty vocal and like when something's not going well, it's like it's not great. It's not great to be. Uh, it's not great for the timeline. I guess it's because it's a lot of people who just are. I mean, they care, but they're just upset.
yeah.
And that's how it kind of is right now. It's almost not even like panic, but just a lot of people like worrying about particular things. Like Kyle Lowry's probably been traded like 15 different times within the last week or two. And even last year, after what happened last year in the playoffs, even though he was playing on one hamstring, like he's he's been a big topic of conversation because it's like he's had 3 17-point games, but yet his other 2 games have just been like just nothing, like nothing's
Yeah.
there. And so that's been a topic of discussion. I mean, yeah, it's been we're a little bit of a ride right now, but I mean, I'm not too worried. It's 5 games over an 82-game season.
Yeah.
If anyone who's going to get the greater than a sum of its parts, it's Eric Spoelstra and his squads. I mean, he'll always find a way to at least like figure out something.
Oh no, absolutely. The Heat and Spolstra have one of the greatest coaches, if not the best coach right now in the association. I mean, Nick Nurse is up there, I think, with what he's been doing with Toronto. Obviously, Pop and everything that he's done. But I like Spolstra when you talk about longevity, consistently getting his team, because there have been some bad Heat teams. There were some years in between this current Heat team and the LeBron and Wade and Bosch
Yep.
Heat that they were not great teams, but they stayed competitive and even a few times leaked into the playoffs on occasion. So Spolstra,
One of the greatest mysteries, not even greatest mystery, but like one of the more forgotten teams was the 2016 team. And I think they were in like a 4-way tiebreaker for the third seed. And they were the team who got the third seed, which is like,
it's crazy.
you kind of gloss over that. I mean, they didn't make it very far. They lost to Toronto in 7, I think, in the second round, but it was just one of those things where it's like, wait, that team had like Joe Johnson, who was like way past his prime. They had this Hassan Whiteside. It was one of those teams where I think it was like Justice's rookie year. Like it was
Mm-hmm.
one like you look at that roster and it's like, wait, that team was like a 3 seed. Like nowadays, that team would probably be like a play-in team.
Mm-hmm.
Like that team, or at least again,
And
they were
that's
in that like 4-way tie. They won like 47 or 48 games or something like that. But like, yeah, you're right. Spolstra did have a couple
it's
of his
just
teams. Like I don't think
it's just
2016 was that good.
that's when it boils down to coaching. It's just
Right.
you got the players that, well, you have the personnel that are able to buy into the system, but it's not just buying into a system to make it work. It has to be a system that works, and that's what
Right.
Spolstra has, and that's what makes him
Right.
so good. Is he has a system that works, and the guys that he's able to get in there, he's able to make it work with them. And also, I know all about Miami fans overreacting because
Yeah.
I am a Dolphins fan, and there is a bleed
Okay, there we go.
there is
Yeah,
a
that's
bleed
right. That's
over
right. Right.
from
Yeah.
the Heat into Dolphin spaces,
Right.
and those are some of the most toxic spaces. I never talk in those spaces. I just get in there and listen,
Yeah.
and oh my god, is it
I
just
love Heat fans. There's some of the more I don't like how they get flack for being like this like not passionate, we don't show up to
Mhm.
games type crew. I mean, yeah, that Miami traffic is probably brutal at times, but it's like I love the fan base, but you have to acknowledge like when things get bad, it's just not great.
no? And
Or
there's
at least like it's the loud minority, but they're a very loud
yeah.
minority.
Yeah, and we'll transition into my Grizzlies Week 1 update, talking about a similar thing. And it hasn't been so much this season so far, because they've been off to a hot start. So things have been fairly calm in the spaces. You should have heard them in preseason, though. You should have heard them in preseason. They weren't too happy at some points in preseason. We were all just like, guys, come on, it's preseason. Give it a rest. They were talking about how a Taylor Jenkins needs to stop messing with these lineups, man. Like, what is he doing? And it's like it's preseason. He's running
That's
now a couple of like 5 rookies out there. Like, he's just experimenting right now. He's preseason. He could do that. He's got no repercussions whatsoever. So just chill. But definitely last season when Memphis started 9-10 before they eventually went on their massive run the next 60 games and grabbed the number 2 seed in the West. There was a lot of talk. They were like, trade Jaren Jackson Jr., fire Taylor Jenkins. All these picks. These were terrible picks. Kleiman, what are you doing, man? But they were all since silenced after the run that Memphis won last year. But again, speaking of runs by Memphis, I have no words for Ja Morant, man. Like,
okay.
it's and it's like I said it. I've said it in spaces, and I've said it in our group chats, our NBA chat for Vendetta, and I've even tweeted this out. And it's like I know Ja Morant very well. Not personally, obviously. I wish,
Right.
but just like I have seen that man play hundreds of games already for Memphis, and I've gone and I've probably seen him live maybe 30 times or more in his short tenure with the Grizzlies in person, and somehow I will turn on the TV for a random Tuesday, Wednesday night game, and he still amazes me, and
Right.
it's just how is he doing what he does? He pulls something new out every single game. And this season, it's been the 3-point shot. He continues to shoot. He's shooting 5 or so feet behind the 3-point line, and he's making it look effortless. And I'm sitting here thinking, is this consistent? Is this going to be a real thing that we're going to have to, that is actually added to his game? Because he's shooting 60% right now. Again,
Right.
they're 4 games into the season, but he is shooting 60%, and he is averaging, I think, is around 6 or 7 3-point attempts per game.
I'm looking at it right now. I just pulled up the stats. Yeah. 5 attempts a game.
5 attempts a game. 5 attempts a game.
That's semantics at this point,
But
right?
but if averaging 60% from 3 with the repertoire that he has, how are you supposed to stop that? What are you supposed to do? Because if you play off of him, well, he's added the 3-point shot to his game. So he's just going to, if you go under a screen, he's just going to call Steven Adams up for a screen, create a little bit of separation, create a little bit of space for himself, and then pull the 3 up. Or if you play up too close on him, like Ben Simmons did, he'll either bait you into a foul, like he did with Ben Simmons, or he'll just blow right by you. And you have to rely on help defense. And if help defense is there, he's got Bane, he's got Aldama, John Conchar, who's come out of nowhere. I mean, he's been around Memphis for a while now, but I did not expect him to be playing like this. But he's got shooters surrounded around him.
Dylan Brooks just got back.
Dylan Brooks just got back, although you don't have to worry. You can leave him open in the corner all you want. He's probably not going to make it. He's a defensive guy. He's a defensive guy, okay?
I mean, he'll hit low. I mean, it's low 30s and 20.
Yeah, here's the thing. Quick thing about Dylan Brooks. I don't know if you've paid much attention, and I obviously wouldn't blame you, to his shot. When he shoots, it is lame, like broken duck neck sideways like this, and there's no flicking, and it's like a push. It's like a push, and he does this with it. So of course it's not going to go in. But then it's like you see him after the game and in practices, the man's flicking his wrist and he's making them, and it's like, dude, just flick your wrists. That's all you got to do.
Maybe the TV angle is just like make it weird. I don't know.
I don't know, dude. I've seen it live, and that thing is pointed a complete like 90. It's like he's doing the John Wall we used to do back in the day. That's what it looks like he's doing with his jump shot. But defensively, I'm happy to have him back, obviously. And I've learned to live with Dylan Brooks. You live by the Dylan Brooks. You die by the Dylan Brooks. We did die at one point by the Dylan Brooks in a game against the Warriors. I think that was game 4 or 5. I can't remember. It was like the first game without Ja. So I think it was game 4.
I think that might have been game 4.
Yeah, I think it was game 4 where, that was not great. But, Yeah, it was game four. Either way, but just the start that they're on is amazing. Now, obviously, if there is some things to criticize of this team, and it happens with a young team, they ball watch a lot.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah, on defense, they sometimes get caught ball watching. That leads to easy backdoor cuts, easy buckets in the paint. Right now, there isn't much of a disparity between the Grizzlies' points in the paint and then opponent points in the paint, which that might change once Jaren comes back. They are missing Jaren still. He did lead the league in blocks last season. He is an intimidating force down there. So maybe they're just missing his length down there and can cover that part of the floor down low to kind of ward some of that away. But then also on long shots, on long rebounds, they're not boxing out. Again, they're just sitting there watching the ball go off the rim and then trying to find out where it's going to land. By the time they do, someone else is either running in and tipping it back for an offensive board, or they're just straight up coming in and grabbing the offensive board. So that's kind of been like a big key for them that I would like to see them a little bit more emphasis on. And sometimes you do see it looks like Jenkins has made some adjustments and some points of emphasis at halftime, specifically, again, going back to John Conchar, because he's had to have an elevated role with Jaren out, Dylan being out for so long, even though he's back now, and Zaire Williams, he's now out 4 to 6 weeks. He's got tendonitis in his right knee, I think, so he's gonna miss a significant amount of time. But in the rebounding, kind of similar to Miami's problem, Memphis has no size outside of its starting front court. I mean, Santi's there, but he's more of like he's not an inside guy. He's more of an outside guy, fairly skinny. But he's not gonna he's not busting you down low or anything like that. Obviously, Steven Adams is there, and he helps like alleviate a lot of these problems.
Right.
But in a series like the Minnesota series in the playoffs this past season, where he was negated, Memphis struggled with rebounding a lot that game, and it was because they did not have their one factor out there that helped level the playing field when it came to rebounds, because that's what he does for this team, and that's why they're a good regular season team right now. But there's nobody that's coming off the bench that is going to aid in that rebounding. Like Brandon Clark, yes, he helped in the playoffs, but only because he was going up against similarly small lineups as well. And of course, he just has insane, crazy hops. The dude is literally the definition of a pogo stick. Like there's the pogo stick perk that's in 2K. Now he is the poster child
Yeah.
for the pogo stick, because he just can keep it going. He's got those bunny hops. He can just keep it going all day. I bet he was good at wall jumps. You ever have to do those before? I remember I had to do those in basketball back in the day when I played, where we lined up against the wall and we had to constantly like jump up and touch a certain part of the wall, and we couldn't like we just had to be like on our toes and keep bouncing to work out the calves. That's what Brandon Clark does.
Yeah, I did that when I played 3 years in high school, and yeah, I remember it was mostly for like conditioning
Yeah,
purposes. Like we didn't just do that as like a drill, but yeah, no, that was definitely something we did.
yeah.
Not very many times, but we did. I do remember
That was one of my
like a
coach's favorite
handful.
things to make us do during conditioning days was
Yeah.
was to do that. My there's my co-host making his first appearance of the show. Shout out Union Pacific Railroad, who caused me to be a little late to work today. I had to cross the tracks to go get gas, and as I was coming back across, they like to have a nice little like 2.5 mile train that was very slow moving along. It took 10 minutes for it to finally cross. That's the worst part about living in the rural South. But anyway, I digress. We will finally move on to our week one overreactions. Again, this is our favorite thing to do in the media, and that is overreact to the slightest bit of information or responding to something that's happened. So, Matt, give me your biggest week one overreaction, or I could go first to kind of tell you what I think as like my big overreaction.
Hold on. I just wanted to go. I wanted to go back, just backtrack a little bit to what you
Okay.
said about Memphis. Just like you mentioned, Brandon Clark. I just wanted to point out that like it was cool. It's been cool to see Brandon Clark, because I remember when he was at San Jose State, again, Mountain West.
Yeah.
Like I follow that. And then of course David Roddy, he was at
Yes.
Colorado State.
Yeah.
He was a freaking monster
Shout out
when
David
he was
Roddy.
at Colorado State. He was like the 6'5" like basketball player that should absolutely be like a fullback or a middle linebacker. But he actually played like quarterback when he was in like high school or something like that, and he was incredible.
Yeah,
no, I just wanted to shout out those two because it's like they were in the Mountain West.
No, absolutely.
Brandon Clark was he went to Gonzaga, he blossomed at Gonzaga, and then got obviously drafted where he's at now. But it's just cool to see. I always like seeing there's tons of small conferences, of course, because of where I live and the school I go to. I focus on the Mountain West, at least to an extent. And it's cool just to see those guys because not everyone.
Yeah, no, this scouting department and front office, they love their smaller conference players. Like, of course, I don't know where Conchar went to college. I can't remember where he went, but obviously you're talking about like David Roddy. I love Roddy. He's struggling a little bit right now, but he's a rookie. And again, that is something else that people are overreacting in the spaces, I feel like, a little bit. It's like, guys, calm down. They're rookies. They're having to have an elevated role right now. They're being asked a lot. Like Roddy's third game of the season, he's thrust out there and he has to guard Luka. Welcome to the NBA, kid. Like you're 20 years old and you're going up against essentially a walking demigod out there.
Right.
And there were times Roddy played excellent defense against Luka. I was very impressed with it, but obviously Luka's going to win that battle 10 times out of 10 right now in Roddy's career. And that's nothing against Roddy. Again, I love Roddy, and I hope he does become a successful piece to this Grizz team because I think he can. He's just a rookie right now. But then Santi Aldama, he was like
that was a little bit of a surprise to
me. He was like from a D2 college, I think it was.
Yeah.
And they took him as the 30th pick in the first round. And he looks like an absolute steal once again. And then of course waiting in the wings, this is the guilty pleasure player that a lot of Grizzlies fans have, and it's Kenneth Lofton Jr. undrafted out of Louisiana
Tech guy.
I can't wait to see him get, and he did get a little bit of NBA playing time at the end of that Mavs game, but I can't wait for some real NBA action for him. I desperately do want to make it to it's a South Haven, Mississippi, where the G League team, the Hustle, play. It's not that far from Memphis. It's like an extra maybe 30-minute drive from me where I live. I've got to make it over there so I can see Kennedy Chandler, Kenneth Lofton Jr., Vince Williams Jr.,
Justin Bean.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize that he was on Memphis, and I didn't know who he was at first. But I'm like,
neither did I. I didn't realize he. I mean, of course, like he was at Utah State. I had no idea he was with Memphis.
Neither did I.
I have to go back and like look at the rosters for most of these G League.
Yeah, no, I felt bad because the only time I knew that he was on the roster was because at the open practice he won the dance off and then he got waived the next day.
But
then he got signed back to the Hustle though, so it's all good. He's and listen, Memphis does an excellent job with player development. So if there's going to be a space for him to succeed and make it in the NBA, it's going to be with the Hustle. And even if it's not with Memphis has done a great job with developing guys there and them going and having successful NBA careers. Other places, the biggest one that I point out is Yuta Watanabe, who nobody knew from Japan, and then has solidified himself as a rotational piece, was with Toronto and now with the Brooklyn Nets. So shout out to Yuta, the one NBA player that I remember a few years ago. My wife and I, we got to sit behind the Grizzlies bench. They were playing Detroit. This was back when Bickerstaff was the head coach. I yelled Yuta and waved at him. He looked at me, smiled, and waved back. So there's always been
he's actually like not like a
personal connection there.
He's not a bad player.
No, he's
good. He's a pretty like good role player.
He's a good role player. Yeah. But okay, so week 1 overreactions. What you got? Biggest overreaction of week 1. Like I said, I could go first if you'd like me to set the tone.
I mean, I was telling you like before we recorded. I'm trying to think of like which one I want. So okay. I'll let you.
Okay, so my biggest week 1 overreaction: the 76ers are screwed. As long as they are, specifically as long as they still have Doc Rivers as a head coach, they are screwed. Because on paper, this team should be unstoppable. The way that James Harden has been playing to start out this season looks like Houston Rockets James Harden right now. He's playing at a phenomenal level. But something is up with Embiid right now. Now, and here's the thing: I have a personal reputation stake on the line here because in my season predictions, I had the 76ers. I just had this gut feeling. I was like, this just feels like a year where they just dominate the regular season. And everyone buys into the cheese of the 76ers once again, only for them to be bouncing like the second round of the playoffs, as has happened in previous years. And I was like, that's going to be this year again. They have a great roster. Tyrese Maxey is awesome. Let me bring up their everything real quick. If there's, I meant to do this beforehand, but they've
Like
started.
Tucker, Melton,
Yeah, and yes, and PJ Tucker, Melt. I love Melt.
who's very near and dear to my heart. People who know me, people who follow me know I'm like the biggest PJ Tucker guy ever. But yeah,
Exactly, but just and it's like I can excuse like a few of their losses. Like they lost to the Celtics opening night. Okay, Bucks. That was just felt like a bad game from both teams. Both teams did not play well that game. It just so happened that the Bucks played slightly better because they end up winning the game. Which again, shout out to the Sixers fans who got their free Chick-fil-A because Giannis missed those 2 free throws. But then they lose to the Spurs, which I mean we'll probably get to the Spurs.
multiple teams are losing to the Spurs nowadays.
That's
Friend.
that. It's very weird. We live in the upside down of the NBA.
Chickster's like, wait, what's going on here? Are we actually going to make the playing game?
They get a win over the Pacers. They lose to the Raptors. I just and again, so this is the whole point of an overreaction. Is obviously I think there's plenty of time for them to get it together. But the story is going to be the same thing. I will stand by this. The story is going to be the same thing as long as Doc Rivers is their head coach. And if you believe in like signs, history repeating itself, Philadelphia right now is in sports heaven because the Eagles are currently undefeated and the Phillies are in the World Series right now. Is it a coincidence that the Phillies were struggling to start the year? They fired their manager and then they go on this unprecedented run. Should the 76ers do the exact same thing? Or are the 76ers the soul that is sacrificed for Philly to win a championship in either of the other two sports? I have no idea. But I have no confidence in Doc right now. And again, on paper, this team should be one of the best teams in the league. But I have no faith in them right now. And they play the Raptors again, who they just lost to. They're in Toronto. Let me look at the rest of their first 10 games. So we've got, again, like I said, they play Toronto again. They play Chicago, and then they got back-to-backs against Washington. Like there's chances there for them to get back on track, but I don't know. I don't know what's gotten into Embiid. He's just not playing with the aggressiveness I feel like that he should be playing as what a lot of people have as a top 5 player, as an MVP favorite, as either the 1 or 2 best center in the league. Like, if you don't think he's the best, you at least think he's the second best. That's me. I'm one of those people. And if you think the opposite of me, then you're probably got those 1 and 2 players flip-flopped. It's Nikola Jokic, by the way, is the other player.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's an overreaction. It's a week 1 overreaction, but I do honestly feel like with Doc there are concerns, and I don't know if this team could win a championship.
Their concerns to me mainly lie on the defensive end, and that surprised me when you have a. I mean, it doesn't surprise me when you put it in the context of okay, their backcourt is Tyrese Maxey, who's small, and James Harden, who, as Patrick Beverly would like to point out, is like a cone, even though he's still like good in the post.
Yeah.
Like if you were to describe James Harden in that context, Patrick Beverly, like if I were to ask Patrick Beverly that, he'd probably say a cone. I'm not going to go that far, but he's not the most fleet of foot type player. But most of their problems range on the defensive end to me. I mean, I think they're allowing too many open shots. I mean, their transition defense off makes and off misses. I don't know if you've seen it. It is horrible. It is horrible. I think like they're last in the league in trend, like fast breaks point allowed by like a considerable margin. Like I don't even know if it's close. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I just remember looking at it, and it's like if you watch it, I've watched sporadically a few of their games. I watched opening night. I watched a little bit last night when they played Toronto. Like, it just looks bad. It just looks bad,
Mm,
and they don't have any bench production right now. Like, Trez isn't getting any run. I mean, Melton's the one guy off the bench right now that's really giving
yeah.
them like decent production. Um, I was expecting a little bit more, like Matisse and Shake Milton. Like,
Oh
they're not even in the rotation anymore.
no, and that's been one of my biggest things too. And I understand like Philly fans, they are an interesting breed, and I know they turned on Matisse because his offensive production isn't there,
Right.
but they were talking him up last season as one of the top defenders in the league. If that is the case, and defense is a thing that you are lacking in, shouldn't he crack the rotation a little
Right.
bit more and at least put him in a rotation where there are some scorers out there? Put him in a rotation that has Melton, that has Harden out there. Let him go out there and guard the number one scorer on the opposing team, at least in that rotation space. But then take off the offensive load from him and kind of hide him on
Right.
the offensive side, kind of push him off into the corner, perhaps. I don't know. Like
Right.
if that is your biggest problem, and it clearly is, I just brought up their statistics up here. Then why not unleash your biggest weapon? Why did he only play? He played like 1 minute the other night. He put him in a garbage time 1 minute
Yep.
situation, and it's supposed to be a young player who again was trumped up by the fan base and played well. And he's averaged over his, like 1.5 steals a game. I looked at this the other day because I
Right.
could not
And
believe.
he's a very good shot blocker for being 6'5" too. Like,
Yes,
he's just lengthy and rangy as hell.
like I mean, again, like Memphis has that version of that. It's Dylan Brooks, but everybody needs that version. Everybody needs that guy that, okay, maybe on the offensive side he's not great, but defensively, he's the guy that you rely on to get a stop.
Right.
So why not unleash him? What's the hesitation right now to unleash him? What you don't have much more to lose. You've already started the season 1-4, like or 1-3, 1-3, 1-4. Either
They're
way,
1-4.
1-4. Yeah. So
They're 1-4.
why not experiment? Why not work him back into the rotation, even if it's 10 minutes, just to get a few extra stops?
And I mean, also, I don't necessarily know if I don't even not even sure if they know what their substitution pattern will look like now, until the rest of the season. But like, if they're gonna not play Trez and B-ball Paul and the backup fives that have been kind of hyped up to be like, as just not a sustainable front court, but like a formidable like kind of unit behind Embiid. And if they're going to kind of use, I guess, maybe like PJ Tucker as this kind of small ball five, which is what he's done throughout
Mm-hmm.
his career. He did it a little bit in Miami. He was most known for doing it in Houston when he was with Harden there. Um, then you can at least allow yourself, because it's like with Embiid, it's a little bit like defenses and opposing centers aren't always going to respect him from beyond the arc. They don't necessarily do the same with Tucker either, but like, you can afford to have one non floor spacer on the floor if it helps out one side of your ball, like a Matisse Thybulle. Like Matisse, like, yeah, they're not going to respect Matisse. It makes it harder for James and Tyrese to attack the lane because just this, it's a little bit of, there's just no spacing. Teams will pinch off the corners, they'll pinch to the nail easier. It makes it easier for teams to collapse. And when you have a team with like Joel Embiid, you want as many shooters out there as possible. But like, when Joel's at least not on the floor, like, I wonder if Doc is going to like potentially stagger those minutes a little bit more. I mean, I would agree. I completely with you on the fact that I can't believe they're playing him. Like, I thought he was going to have at
Mm-hmm.
least some role within the rotation over these first few games. Um, and it just feels like Doc is doing what Doc does and just relies so much on his starters and his veterans. I mean, well, I guess like Doc has been a guy who's relied on his veterans so much throughout his career. I mean, he actually has been criticized for playing his bench too much at times, but like, that's not the point here.
Yeah.
But like, he's relying on his veterans so much, specifically his starting lineup, so much early in this season. And it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. Like, 37-year-old PJ Tucker is getting like 35 plus minutes a night. Like, I don't know if you can do that. Like, at least at this point in the season. Like, that personally doesn't make much sense to
No.
me. And I love PJ Tucker. I don't think, just on the topic, I don't know if Doc is using PJ Tucker the way he probably should be using him. the way he was used. But I also this also goes to my Miami Heat bias a little bit. Spoelstra used Tucker in a different way that I don't think PJ's had in his entire career, and that's because PJ was moving around the floor. He wasn't just stationed in the corner like he was in Houston and in Milwaukee, and even a little bit right now in Philadelphia. He's just kind of stationed in the corner, and teams are just playing off him a little bit. They're not respecting it. It's almost like it's just fake spacing. He'll knock down 35-40% of his corner threes. Teams are okay with that if he's only attempting 3, 4, or 5 a game. Like they're not really going to defend him like that. But like with when he was with Miami, Spoelstra would use him as like a dribble handoff initiator. Miami and Spoelstra love the dribble handoff. It's one of their patented staples within that offense. They're not necessarily using that enough with him yet. They love moving him around and setting screens with them. They loved. I mean, he was even putting the ball on the floor. He had one of the better in between games that I've seen for a player who's 36 and never had an in between game before. Like he had this floater that that felt like he shot like 75% on, but I don't think he did. Like he just is not using, like it feels like offensively Philadelphia is just super stagnant and they're not moving. And of course that's a little bit of the James Harden experience to an extent. Like that's how he was in Houston. That's how it was in Brooklyn for a little bit. Like it's not a new thing, but like you have to, when you want to squeeze the juice out of these players at this stage of their careers, I think, and of course, if you want to like churn out victories and be like a good enough team, you're going to have to start changing something at some point. It's not just James. It's just you're changing the substitution patterns. You're changing the rotation. You're changing how the offense is played. You're changing defensively, like what the defensive assignments are going to be. You're going to have to change all this stuff. And I don't know if, I mean, Philadelphia just doesn't, I mean, it's 5 games into the season. Yeah, we're talking about it like we're 35 or 55 games into the season, but we're only 5 games into the season. They have plenty of time. So, like there's a way, there's a time where you might look back at this and be like, wait, like they were like the 2 seed in the East in the Eastern Conference Finals. We're talking about them like this 5 games into the season, but like they just don't look like a team yet that's like that knows how to win.
Yeah.
And knows how to play together and knows how to play not even the right way, but like I guess the right way.
Yeah. And again, that's the name of the segment. It's overreaction to week
Right.
1. So Matt, give me your overreaction. What is something that you can act or, say outlandish things about right now?
I was too low on this team heading into the season. And okay, so there were 2 teams in the West that I was lower on. Or that not that I was lower on, but like I had them when we did the power rankings, I had them outside of really where I think they'll end up. And I had like just a gut feeling. I was like, I know I'm going to be wrong in this team, and that's the Denver Nuggets and the team that I'm going to be talking about, the New Orleans Pelicans.
Mm-hmm.
And I really do think the New Orleans Pelicans could be a Western Conference Finals team, or at least a team that has the potential, assuming they're healthy, to make it out of the West. And that's just because I love the way. I mean, of course, the Zion factor. I mean, I know he's been dealing with injuries. When you look at it from a preseason perspective, it's like, okay, we haven't seen him play basketball in a year and a half. Like, how is that going to end up? We hear the conversations about how he's either in shape or out of shape or whatever it is, and we're just curious to see how that meshes together. But it's like, I think they have a really well constructed team. They have a bunch of complementary wings. You need wings in a wings league, and I think they have a bunch of complementary wings that just know how to play together. I love, for some reason, you watch this guy play for years, but like I love watching Jonas Valanciunas play. He's not like your old school center, but like he's very good in the low post. Like he's that big center that you just can't move off his spot. He's developed a little bit of a 3-point shot. He's excellent on the glass. Like he does all the little things. He's a good screener. He does all the little things that you want a center to do. And I don't know if he gets enough recognition for it. And he's one of the better offensive rebounders in the league.
Yes, I love Valanciunas. I hated to see him go. I understood why he had to. The idea of him leaving was not because he's a bad player, but because the focus of the offense needed to shift in another direction. I'm happy with said direction because I think if he was still here, we don't have the blossoming of Desmond Bane like we did last season, because the hierarchy would have been Ja, Valanciunas, Jaren, Dylan, and Bane would have been very low on that totem pole. But with Dylan being out most of last year and Adams not being as aggressive on the offensive end as like Valanciunas is, things just kind of naturally opened up for him with Memphis last season. But no, nothing but Valanciunas love here. Shout out to the Valanciunas
Yeah.
fan page. They were great when they were with Memphis. Now we have the Steven Adams fan page because every player has a fan page now.
But yeah, no, like I love how this team is built. Like CJ McCollum has been like just awesome to start the season. I can't remember what his stat line was, but he was excellent against Dallas the
Mm-hmm.
other night. Um, like, of course, if Zion is healthy, we know what he's capable of doing. I mean, I know he's not going to be the point Zion that he was under Van Gundy, but he's still going to be a 23 to 25 point per game scorer. He's going to get you 7 rebounds a game. He's going to maybe get you a few assists. He's going to come. He can orchestrate an offense to an extent. I mean, Brandon Ingram, we all know what he's been one of their best, if not the best player as well throughout these first, I think, what, 4 or 5 games,
Yeah.
4 games. And then of course when you look at down up and down their roster, I just absolutely love the young guys that they have. Herb Jones, I thought, was kind of snubbed, I guess, off the all defensive team, or at least off the all. I don't know if he made all rookie, but he he was snubbed from one of those two teams. I can't remember which one. But I mean, he is a ball of. If you like gritty basketball, I mean, of course, like gritty. I mean, yeah,
Yeah.
Memphis fan, Heat fan, like we just love like the gritty. Like
Yeah.
uh, we love people who just love doing the dirty work, and he definitely does the dirty work. I mean, I like Dyson Daniels and what he's done so far throughout his rookie season. Of course, like Larry Nance, Trey Murphy's lit the city on fire from beyond the arc
Oh.
so far. So
Mm-hmm.
it's like I don't know if all of this is sustainable, but like this is a team where I look like the West is deep as hell, and so is the East. I mean, that's what makes the NBA so much fun. Is you have like there's so many. It's it's as talented as we've ever seen it, and it's only going to get more talented, of course, when we have like Scoot and Victor and such come into the league. But like right now, it's incredibly talented. But like I look at this New Orleans team, and it's like this is a team that like, of course, yeah, they took Phoenix to 7 games. What was it, 6 or 7 games last year, something
Yeah.
like that. Um, they're a pain in the ass. And if they catch like a ball of fire, like if CJ and Zion and Ingram specifically catch a ball of fire in a 7 game series, like that's a team that's going to be dangerous. And it's like I look at them right now after their start, and it's like again 4 games, and I'm like, damn, like I wish I would have had them like a little bit higher because it's like I I had just had that gut feeling. Um,
Yeah. They
and so far they've superseded my expectations so far, and I'm interested to see if this pans out over a full 82.
yeah, and it's scary also. I think the only thing that can hold them back is just the fact that some of their core players are so young
Mm-hmm.
that just maybe
Right,
the length of the season they're not used to it just yet. Zion comes back, of course the health concerns are there, but I think as long as they make it to the playoffs and they don't get stuck in the play-in, they are a danger dark horse team to go on a run. Because as long as you're not in the play-in, then you can't have that one game where you have your big trio of Zion, Ingram, and McCollum all have bad games or just not as good games, and the other team just that game they can't miss, and so they win, move on, and you're home after the one game or so.
right.
But just the scariness of New Orleans isn't just the present; it's their future also.
Oh, right.
Be
Absolutely. They have that. Again, they probably, if that pick conveys, they'll have that second pick, I think, plus their own.
exactly, and that
And so
pick,
it's like if you can add at least 2 players, they might. I don't. They might have another one. I'm not sure. I want to say they
they
might have
if
two or
if they
three. But
keep the Lakers pick, it is a guaranteed top 10 pick,
right,
and that
right,
is scary because it's a deep draft that's
right.
coming up. People do not realize that you can pick 1 through 14, and you're gonna get a guy that is going to contribute in a big way to your team. Now everybody wants the number one pick. They want Victor, the 7 foot demigod from France. And if New Orleans was to somehow get the number one pick from the Lakers pick, I might jump out of a window
Oh my
because
god.
it would
Oh
just
my.
be the most unfair thing in the world to ever happen. The NBA is completely rigged if that is the case. I mean,
This is anti-Lake. This would be like rigged against the
it
Lakers.
would be rigged against the league. It would be a dynasty to rule all dynasties. There would be no stopping this.
Yeah,
But just even if that doomsday scenario doesn't happen, they're still so dangerous. And the fact that most of their big contracts right now, they're in McCollum, they're in Valanciunas, and in they have their youngster in Ingram signed and extended. But it's like they can move off of some of these older
right.
contracts and shed some of these excess picks that they have from the Davis trade and some other trades that they've made. To the point to where they can shed those contracts and they can bring in free agents, and free agents, as long as New Orleans is competing, they're going to want to come. They are going to want to come, or they can move up in the draft if they so chose. Kind of do what Memphis has had to do, where Memphis can attract free agents, and Memphis kind of got so good early. They did almost too perfect of a job rebuilding, so now they have to be extremely careful in the draft with
Right.
their picks. They have to be in which, I mean, Memphis's front office has done an excellent job
Hmm.
so far, I would say, at picking up players late in the draft. They got Desmond Bain at 30. Brandon Clark was in the latter half of the draft. Santi Aldama was the 30th pick, and they're rocking with a lot of late first and second round picks and some undrafted rookies as well. But the future is so scary, and as a Grizzlies fan, it does I am scared of New Orleans. I will openly admit it. They scare every bone in my body because I'm like,
Yep.
oh my gosh, that
They
is
have one of the league's, arguably the league's top asset right now in terms of draft capital, because
yes,
that's the Lakers pick.
that is the Lakers pick.
At least
And
in this current state right now. I don't know. I don't know if we were to do like a power rankings, what would be the best versus like the worst or whatever. But like that's certainly up there for the best.
oh,
So that boy, that as of right now, that sucker can, as we're talking about, can turn into
exactly. If the
top pick
Lakers
when your
continue
confidence
to
wins.
if the Lakers
Yeah,
continue to be, listen, if you have a pick that could be anywhere in the top 6, just one of those increased chances because of how they've changed the lottery up
right,
to where it could jump to number 1, it's an insanely, it's almost an invaluable asset, or like you cannot
right.
put a value on the asset of just that one trade asset alone. And it's like New Orleans could potentially pull off any trade that they want to, because it's like, hey, here's this pick. You have a chance at Victor or anybody in this draft. You could get exactly who you want, a player to turn around your franchise. Just give us your star player, and then we'll go make a run at a title, sign him to a long and extensive contract, and then go and keep competing for titles in the future with
Do you
Zion.
think? Do you think? Sorry to interrupt, but do
No,
you
you're fine.
think like is there a possibility that like they're they're I mean they're in line to do it, but like do you think they trade for like a bigger name per se come the trading deadline potentially with that pick? I mean, it's got to be someone. But when you're talking about an asset that substantial, it's going to be someone big, like not Kevin Durant, but like a Kevin Durant like player. Like
Yeah,
at
it
some
would.
point, we're at some point a superstar. Odds are that a superstar becomes more unhappy than not. Like something that could factor in to New Orleans being a team that makes the Western Conference Finals and or Finals team is if they potentially move off that asset for something like much bigger and greater. I
Yeah,
wonder. I don't know who. I don't know who
I
you're
don't
asking.
I don't know who it would be either. I'm just looking at the landscape right now, which again, it's so early, it's like hard to tell, but it's like eventually
Right.
I do fully believe the all the stars will align correctly, and the better teams with the superstars will be back at the top of each respective conference, and then the teams that are it's kind of exceeding expectations right now. Here's looking at you, Utah. Which of if Utah somehow makes the playoffs this season, I will say Danny Ainge is the greatest general manager in the history of every sport. And like this is like this transcends the past couple hundred years of sporting history. Okay, Danny Ainge is better than anybody that's built a Premier League team, that's built an NFL team, an NHL team, an MLB team, a cricket team, a World Cup team, teams that, nationality teams, does not matter. They are in the shadow of Danny Ainge. If Danny Ainge was able to sell off as much as he did, get all those assets, and somehow this team comes together and just competes and makes it to the playoffs. I don't know if it's going to happen, but Larry Markkinen apparently is the second coming of Dirk Nowitzki now. So it's that's happened. That's been a revelation. There's an overreaction for you for week one. But it's like the prime place I've always felt this. It's either going to be like, I don't know if Washington would be worth it, like going after Beal with that high of a pick. But I've
I mean,
always
the
felt,
first name that came to mind to me was I don't know how good this team will be. I don't think this pick would necessarily be moved off of, but like if New Orleans was looking for a bigger trade, like what if like Chicago gets off? I mean, they're 3-2 right now, but what if Chicago gets off to like a rough starter? They have like a rough patch somewhere middle of the season, and David Griffin calls up Chicago and just be like, "Hey, what is DeMar DeRozan on the table?"
yeah,
I mean, I'm not saying I don't
yeah,
necessarily know how good of a fit that is. I don't know what the financials would be. I don't just thinking about it out loud. I don't know how good of a fit that is. I don't think that's that great, but just someone of that caliber, I guess per se.
yeah.
Like what? Yeah, I'm trying to think of
Is
like another name that could potentially creep up. I mean, you never know at this league. This league is
yeah,
silly in its own
you
ways. Like
never know.
what if like I don't know another one like Lamelo Ball was like, yeah, I want out.
Yeah, or
Someone of that kind of caliber. I mean, I know Lamelo Ball is already on a bad team already. Then no Charlotte's probably going to tank at some point. If they're probably going to move off pieces. I don't think they're going to move off Lamelo, but I'm saying like just someone of that caliber. I'm just throwing names out. I don't think this is actually going to happen. So please
no,
don't
no, no, no.
aggregate me, you aggregators.
I don't know. I'd really have to think. I'd really have to think about that. But we'll go ahead and we'll move on. I know we've already passed the hour mark on the podcast, and Matt and I, both of our respective teams, have games that we very much like to watch coming up soon. And
40
also,
minutes, baby. But
yeah,
it's all right. We can still go
it's
on. It's all right.
and here's the thing too. It's like the game. Yeah, it starts at 10 Eastern or whatever. We still got like 15 to 17 minutes before tip
Right.
off. Okay, the NBA
Right.
never starts on time. That's why I'm not worried. Like when I go to Grizzlies games and they're like, "Oh, we have to leave at this time. We got to be there this time." I'm like, "Listen, if we're through the doors by, you know, 10 like a quarter till, we're perfectly fine." They're all
Right.
like rushing to get to their seats. I'm going to the concession stand because by the time I get through the concession stand and I sit down, the national anthem is fixing to start playing, and
Right.
it's like
Like that's
I'm
one
right
thing I
on time.
respect about baseball is like they have like okay, yeah, the first pitch is at 4:07 or like 7:07
Yeah,
East or something like that. Like they get it like almost like to the minute. And the NBA is like, all right, yeah, this game starts at 5 o'clock, but we're not tipping until 5:19. It's like,
yeah,
wait, like then what?
yeah.
All
Or
right, but like, all
or
right, this
or
is
or worse, it's like they keep that same time, and it was like the Warriors ring ceremony that took like 20 to 30 minutes. So, and I
right,
mean, it's a West Coast game, and I'm sitting there. It's like it's 10:30. I am tired. I've got to go to bed. I've got work tomorrow. Let me
right,
watch some of this game and go to bed. And it's like, no, we gotta bring an executive that you've never seen his face before. He's got to give a 10-minute speech to the fans of Golden State, thanking them for all
right,
their money and their support for the
right.
past year. But anyway, I digress. So similarly to kind of the overreactions here, we are gonna obviously after 1 week declare one player as the MVP of the league. Matt, who is your MVP after 1 week in the NBA season?
I mean, you
There's
can
there's a couple
go,
candidates, and they're good ones.
yeah, you can go multiple routes here. I'm just gonna pick Giannis because I mean they're 3-0. He's leading the league in scoring right now. He's averaging like 36, 13, and 5 with a couple blocks. He's shooting, I think when I was looking at it, he's shooting like nearly 70% from the floor, nearly 75% on twos. Just stupid, silly numbers that only a 5 game sample uh, could have, but it's still incredible what he's doing. I mean, you can go like Tatum, you can go Morant, you can go
Yeah.
Damian Lillard if you want to. You can go a bunch of names. I'm sure I'm leaving a few names out, but like I'm just gonna pick Giannis just because they're undefeated through 3 games. I mean, they haven't played a whole lot. None of these teams have. But if I were to pick one silly MVP that may or may not be the MVP by the end of the year, I'll just go Giannis.
Yeah, that was exactly my pick too.
Yeah.
Just his he's a god walking among us when it comes to NBA. And this is the craziest thing. I have a funny Giannis story too. And it was I got to see Giannis in person his second season in the league at Memphis, and I remember my friend was hyping this guy up. And he was like, because I was like, this was like, I was a big fan of the NBA, but I wasn't like delving deep into it like I started to like a year or two later, and especially up until now. It was just, but he was like, yeah, there's this dude. His name is Giannis. I couldn't even pronounce his last name then, but he's like, yeah, dude, he's from Greece. They call him the Greek Freak. He's supposed to be like the next big thing. He's like the next Kevin Durant. This, that, this, that. I get there. He goes for like 2 of 16 that game,
Oh boy.
and I'm like, this is supposed to be like the next greatest thing. I was like, he sucks. He's terrible. Look how skinny he is. Boy, was I
Oh my
wrong.
goodness.
Fast forward, things that did not age well. That was
Yeah, we can get
was one of
like an
those
old
things.
takes exposed. Uh,
Thankfully, I never tweeted that, so we can't at old takes
yeah, that's
freezing
good
cold
point.
takes. But no, Giannis hands down right now, and it's not me like avoiding to be a homer right now. Ja is obviously playing amazing, and I think that if Memphis does keep this up and he keeps up the play that he is, then he's definitely going to have a strong case. If he's able to do
For
this over an
sure.
82 game span, then it's going to be like, yeah, why not? If they're like the 1 or 2 seed, then it's like, yeah, why not? Why couldn't Ja be that? Like, yeah, obviously he's got good help and everything, but why not Ja? He's still averaging over 30 points a game right now. Again, like I said, shooting the three ball at 60%, but Giannis is shooting it at an incredible clip too. I think it's like I saw a stat today and I wish I would have kept it and brought it up. But Ja and Giannis are the only two players in the NBA right now that are averaging, it was like more than 15 points in the paint, shooting over 50% from the field, and then shooting like I think it was like over 40 or 50% from three. I can't remember the exact statistic. Whichever one it was just Giannis and Ja. They're the only two players to be doing it right now in the NBA. It had something to do with scoring inside and then shooting really well outside. Again, I can't remember what the stat was, and I wish I would have saved it. I just saw it in passing on Twitter, I think yesterday or today. But and then Tatum would probably be like number three for me. Siakam's up there. He's playing extremely well
Siakam too. Yeah.
right now. But those would kind of be like my big four right
Can we
now. But
throw Keldon Johnson or Devin Vassell into that conversation?
I mean, absolutely, absolutely. Again, this is
Yeah.
week
Laurie
one.
Markkinen. Yeah.
Yeah, it's week one, and as we know, the season is decided this very week.
Yep.
So we've got to pick our MVPs, and we got to pick who's getting fired, our overreactions, everything, because this is it. This is the season. The other 70 something games, it doesn't matter. It's these first 4 to 5 games that truly matter and
Yep.
determine a team's future.
Yeah.
But
Joshua Primo. Yeah. Give me some. Give me some Spurs or Jazz. Someone. I mean, hey, they're 4-1. I mean, yeah, or Simons. I don't know.
Anthony Simons, he kind of came out of nowhere. He got a massive contract that was just like,
Yep.
wow. And when I see all these other players getting these types of contracts, it just tells me Desmond Bain is going to get freaking paid when his time
Well, now with the new
comes.
TV deal that's going to hit in I think 25, that's you're going to see players who are going to get 50, 60, 70 mil per year, and so get them now. I mean, when you look at these deals now from like a perspective, it's like okay, like yeah, RJ, Hero, Poole got these extensions. They're all from the same draft class. It's like some people look at the numbers. It's like okay, that's like teams are overpaying for them, overpay, and it's like are they like soon we're going to be seeing players get like 70 mil a
Yeah,
year.
I agree. That's
The
that's
cap is going to
true.
be absolutely insane, and so it's like when you look at this 2, 3, 4 years from now, it's going to be like oh yeah, this was actually like kind of a bargain compared to some
Yeah,
of these
and
deals
and
that are being handed
and
out now, and it's only going to continue growing.
and I would much rather my team do that on a young player than do
Right.
what the Bucks did with Matthew Dellavedova after he won a title with LeBron. They paid him, it was an insane amount of money, because that was that weird year where there was like no good NBA, no good free agents, but there was an increase in the salary cap, and there was just a ton of money that teams had to spend, and just a bunch of players got an insane amount of money that they
Was
were.
Mozgov one of those guys too? The
Yes,
Lakers.
Mozgov to the Lakers
Mozgov,
was
yeah.
another one of those where he got like 20 something million a year, and I know that Doesn't seem like a whole lot now, but this was what, 2017, I think, 2016.
Yeah, it was around that time.
That was a lot of money for them. But again, the salary cap had gone up, and these teams, they were like, "Oh, we need players, so give us to them." But
Was Mozgov on that finals team, or was he on the one that made it the I think in 15. I mean, I think he made it in 15, but I don't. I'm trying to remember if he was on that finals team. But around that time, he got that. Yeah, he got that lucrative Lakers deal, and I was in on my like personally like 15-year-old me was like. I mean, I wasn't obviously as smart as I was now in terms of like just basketball sense, but like I was like, oh wow, like Mozgov's a good player, but that obviously didn't work out at all. I don't know what
yeah,
else in hindsight, but yeah.
trying to. Oh, I'll find it later. It's no big deal. Um, but either way, so real quickly before we get to the end and wrapping this up, Matt, do you have any? So like, I've always considered the first week as like you can kind of like change your prediction, your preseason prediction for something, and it not be like too detrimental to you. You know, you could be like, okay,
Mhm.
well, I've had kind of a week to think about it. I've got to see it live in action. I'm going to change my pick to this MVP pick, finals pick. Is there anything you want, like, that you feel like you need to change, or it's like, are you going to rock with your guns, stick with it for.
I usually try to stick with what I have. I mean, I had Bucks Warriors. I had the Bucks winning
Yeah.
it. I mean, it's chalk. I know, but because usually when you come up with these chalk predictions, that they don't always happen, and so like last year, I had Lakers Nets. Idiot Matt. I was out on the Westbrook trade, and then I talked myself into it, and then of course we all know what happened after that. And it's like Jesus, like I wish I would have just stuck with my gut the first time. But like at this point in the year, I'm usually like rearranging like predictions on teams. Like one team I've been impressed. I mean, obviously, other than the Pelicans and the Nuggets, one team that I've been impressed in these first handful of games is the Knicks.
Mm,
I've really like I've gotten to watch them a little bit, and it's like I really like what Jalen Brunson is doing. I think they're one of three teams in the league that have a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense through these first few games. Um, One of my favorite acquisitions that I wrote for the site this offseason was Hartenstein. I thought he was a really
yes. Yes.
interesting role. I thought he was a really like impactful role player when
Yeah.
he was with the
Oh,
Clippers.
I wanted him so badly.
Yeah, and like he's doing like good, and it's like Jalen Brunson's commanding that offense as good
Mm,
as anyone would expect him to be. I mean, he's averaging what 20 a game with like 8, 9 assists. He's
yeah.
not turning the ball over that much. Like he's really taking command of that offense. And like the problem with the Knicks over the last several years has been they need someone to kind of control that offense and kind of get them into their sets and have like almost a true point guard. That's not Julius Randle or even like an age-old Derrick Rose, right? Like, and I'm guessing people at the time were expecting quickly to kind of be that guy. But I didn't love what I've talked about this before, but I didn't love like all the draft night kind of transactions that
Yeah.
the Knicks made. I thought that was all weird, and I didn't. I think I wrote some about it for the site. Like, is this really like worth it? But so far, I look like a big old idiot, which isn't uncommon. Um, and so I've been in. I had the Knicks as a playing team. I think they could be. We have to see where this falls after 25, 30, 35 plus games, obviously. But like, there is a way the Knicks could be like a 6 seed, or
Yeah.
even maybe like they win a playing game or two and be a 7 seed. But like, I had them as a playing team at the start, and most of my justification for that was the East is so deep. Just like the West is. I mean, you have your Philadelphia, Brooklyn, Boston, then you have Miami, Brooklyn, Cleveland, Philly. I mean, you have all of those teams and like the top six: Toronto, Cleveland, Atlanta. Like, there's so many like good teams, and like mathematically speaking, one of those teams has to be, or one or two of them, or three of them have to be playing teams, just because they're going to beat the hell out of each other, and you just don't know where those
Mm,
dominoes fall. But like, so I had the Knicks as a playing team. Like, I think like the 9 or 10. I probably had them as a 10. I don't remember my predictions off the top of my own head, but
yeah.
um,
I can't remember where I had him either.
yeah, but
But
like they were kind of in that range for me. But like they could like if they keep this up again, speaking 4 games into a season, if they keep this level of offense and defense up, I don't know how sustainable it actually is, but like they've been a team where I've like watched them and I'm like, oh, like I'm like pleasantly surprised. And I'm again Heat fan, not a Knicks fan at all. Um, but like just from a basketball perspective, I've been pleasantly surprised with how they've played objectively through their first 4 games, and um, if they keep playing like this, they could be a 6, 7, 8 team.
Yeah, I still feel like Thibodeau plays his starters a little bit too much. And
Oh yeah, no
he
question.
did that in the Hornets
Yeah,
game. I was looking at the Hornets game. Randall played 40 minutes, Brunson played 41 minutes, and RJ played
didn't that go into
39
overtime
minutes.
though?
Yes, it did go into overtime. Yes.
Okay,
So
that
okay, so
probably
yeah,
explains
that
some of it.
explains it.
But
Yes,
you're right.
but still, they still would have ended in
You're
the
right.
mid to upper 30s, which is a lot for early season, especially some of your vets,
Right.
and
Right.
I would love to see him play some of his younger guys more. Although some games he has, and it hasn't been because he's been forced to because of injuries or foul problems from his starters. He's maybe the old dog is learning some new tricks in Thibodeau, and I'm happy to see Cam Reddish getting to
Yep.
flourish. I've been a Cam Reddish believer. I have a lot of friends that are not Cam Reddish believers. I'm a Cam
Yeah.
Reddish believer.
I'm.
He just needed
Yeah.
the proper setting. And again, it's like, Trey loves to talk about how when he does his his quarterback and his all of his NFL takes, when he always goes back to high school, pointing to how good they were in high school and facing off against some of the the top recruits in high school. And it's like you don't just lose that stuff overnight. You build upon it and you carry it over. So it's like no wonder like some of the top recruits from high school, even the ones that take a little bit longer to get accustomed to like the professional level, they eventually figure it out. Cam Reddish took I think Anthony Edwards said he dropped 60 on him in high school. Anthony Edwards, one of the top recruits coming out of high school, and then obviously the number one pick in the NBA draft. You don't just lose that ability overnight. Obviously, Edwards could become the better player, and it's probably the better player. I would say he's the better player right now. But Cam Reddish, he's a hooper. I like Toppin. I think he's a little bit underutilized. Quickly, I think he'll be a good backup. I think he's been a good backup. But yes, Brunson, his command of the offense, he's done a lot better job than what I thought he was going to do. I knew they were going to improve somewhat with
Mhm.
Brunson running the point, but not to the level that I thought that they were. So
Right.
kudos to the Knicks. And yeah, I'm for me personally too, I haven't changed up anything. It's also why I'm going to be really hard on the 76ers because a couple of my predictions were 76ers oriented. I thought they were going to be the number
Yep.
1 seed out east, and I was like, this is going to be the year Embiid finally breaks through and win the MVP because I didn't like Giannis. I'm like, maybe, I don't know. Middleton not being there, maybe some defenses figured out. Maybe they fall to like the 3rd seed or 4th seed like they were last year. And then Jokic isn't going to win it again, regardless of how he plays, unless he's putting up unholy numbers. And I
Yeah.
mean,
There's
he's
voter fatigue there.
yeah, but he's not going to get it just because of he's won it twice in a row and he hasn't won a championship. And regardless of how you feel, the MVP is very narrative driven and oriented. And then the only other real threat I thought was going to be Luca, and it was like
Yeah.
if they are a top 5 seed and he's putting up numbers that 2K always says that he's going to put up, then then yeah, obviously Luca is going to be the massive threat. But I thought it was going to be his year to do it and break through. But he just hasn't lived up to it just yet. But again, even though they were my overreaction, it's 5 games into the season. They've got 70 something more to figure it out and to get right back on track. But Matt, I think we are going to get ready and close this down. Just one more thing that I want from you. We do this thing on the podcast. It's called Taking the Stand, and usually I'm able to like sift through and kind of Twitter stalk said person and find a hot take. Or what I've done recently is if I can't find anything because either I just haven't had the time or that person tweets a lot, so I can't like sift through all of their tweets and find a hot take that I really like and I want to latch
Me,
on.
I tweet way too much. Don't
So
follow me. Mute me. I would mute myself. I've told myself. I've been on the record saying it. I'll say it again. If I were following myself, I would absolutely mute myself.
but so Matt, you're gonna take the stand. I just want you to give me your hottest take that you have right now concerning the NBA. Could be a player, could be a coach, could be a team, positive, negative, whatever. Just give me your biggest hot take and let's put it on the record.
I don't think this is my biggest hot take. It's the biggest one that comes to mind. But I've seen chatter lately, or I've seen, well, I mean, I get it because I'm a Minnesota Vikings fan. I know how the Minnesota fan base works, right? They haven't gotten a lot of good fortune, so to speak. The Twins, not a lot of good fortune. The Vikings certainly as hell, not a lot of good fortune. It sucks sometimes. It's heartbreaking. It's disappointing. The same with the Timberwolves, at least in recent memory. Not a lot of good fortune. And so I've seen a little bit of like the big red button being pushed too quickly. And I'm not necessarily there yet. I've been on record. I mean, I've talked to Trey about this off air. I'm much higher on the Timberwolves
Hmm.
as he is. Um, but so I'm just high on them in general, but like I think they're 3-2 right now. And I mean, of course, they had just a couple of bad losses to the Spurs, and I can't remember who the other team was, but was it the Thunder? Maybe it was one of those teams. They had a soft-ish schedule to begin the season, and I'm not my biggest hot take. I don't even know if it's a
It
hot.
was it was the Jazz.
It
They've
was
lost to
oh, it
the
was the Jazz.
Jazz and the
Okay,
Spurs. Yeah.
Jazz. I'm not ready to panic. If I'm Minnesota, I'm trying my best to like like take a little bit of a chill pill, and here's why. Chris Finch, before he was the head coach of Minnesota, he was in Toronto. He was in Denver for a little while, and he's had experience with two big teams. Specifically, when he was in Denver for I think a couple years, he was very experienced with working with Yusuf Nurkic and Nikola Jokic. I mean, they didn't get a whole lot of minutes together. I mean, of course, he also had Kenneth Fareed while he was there, and so he has experience working with these two big lineups. That was one of the reasons why I wasn't as concerned with Minnesota heading into the season, at least in the regular season, was
Yeah.
because there's a coach that has at least some precedent of dealing with these two big lineups. And so, I mean, when you go over these first 5 games, it's not just that. It's like they're not getting back on defense. There's just something missing energy wise. Like we're still trying to figure out who the leader of that team really is. And that's something that they're going to figure out over time. I don't know if that's going to be something that um, comes in the 10th game, 20th game, 30th game, 40th game, or maybe it doesn't come until like the very end of the regular season. But like at some point, at some time or the other, I think my guess it'll be Anthony Edwards. There's going to be some leader of that team who will like rally the troops together. I mean, Minnesota, when I looked at it from last year, when prep for this, they were like they started they it was like they started like 3-9 or something. It was something like super super bad, and of course we know what they did.
Hmm.
They surged into the 7th seed. I mean, Anthony Edwards and Carl Anthony Towns, uh, like took they just went off, and kind of like led that team to that spot. And so when I look at Minnesota now, it's like I like their team from the perspective of they have an incredibly valuable center, regardless of how you feel about them, in Rudy Gobert. They have a good enough floor spacer in Carl Anthony Towns, and they have I don't even want he might be there, he might not be there, but for lack of a better word, generational star, not generational, but they have a star talent at shooting guard, um, in Anthony Edwards, a young budding talent who can create his own shot, who can put up 25 on any given night if he wants to. They also have D'Angelo Russell. I mean, off the bench, they have Nas Reed, Jordan McLaughlin, Jaden McDaniels. Like they have a bunch of like interesting pieces. And so when I see some of the chatter, I mean, this is just all across social media. I mean, um, it's a little bit like okay, I get it from like the Minnesota fan perspective of like holy shit, this is like something's gone awry. It's all gonna go right. It's like almost that half glass empty kind of a feel. And I get that as a Vikings fan. I'm kind of that same way
Yeah.
when it comes to Minnesota Vikings. We're not here to talk football, but that's just how
Yeah.
Minnesota fans are. They're expecting to get their heart broken at least from what I've seen at some point or the other. I don't think Minnesota is going to win a title, but in the regular season per se, I at least 5 games in, I just see a little bit too much panic. I'm not there yet. I mean, of course, I'm saying that as a neutral observer, but I'm saying that as like I don't really know if I mean, yes, there's some things to be concerned about, but I don't think like I'm not pushing the big red button quickly, and I feel like some Minnesota fans that I have seen are pushing the big red button, and I'm just not there yet.
Yeah, I mean, listen, they had a massive trade in the offseason. You bring in a new star in Gobert. It's going to take some adjustments, obviously, you know. And sometimes players adjust to teams differently than others, and it's a mixture of factors. It's coaching, it's system, it's the personnel that's around this new player and how they slot in and everything. And you know, maybe it's just taking a little bit of extra time for Gobert to fit into the system. I've always thought they were. I thought they were going to be a fairly good uh, regular season team. I thought they were going to struggle early on, which is kind of what they have done right now. I kind of personally, I thought like something similar is going to happen. They were either going to be super great or they were going to be just slightly better than last year. I didn't think they were going to regress in any way. But the playoffs, on the other hand, I have a lot of other thoughts about
Right.
this team in the playoffs. Like they got rid of Jared Vanderbilt, who I thought was extremely valuable for them defensively
Yep.
speaking and offensively too. He had a couple of good
Beasley.
offensive game. Yeah, and Beasley too, which I saw that man get baptized in person, and oh my gosh, that was. We talked about it earlier in the podcast. Ja continues to amaze me, but that was just insane. But Vanderbilt defensively was extremely valuable in that series, and in a league where it seems like one of the most valuable pieces a team could have, and I think we might have mentioned it earlier, is length on the wing at the wing position. Vanderbilt is the type of guy that you would love to have come off the bench,
Yep.
play 15, 16 minutes a game with that second unit and get some defense in there. But I think they're going to be fine in the regular season. It's the playoffs that I have more concerns, and it is more also kind of personnel a little bit. I think Cat's a goofball because I mean he's just like and again I got to see a lot of it at first hand with the playoff series with the Grizzlies. I got to see him did this weird thing where he like went between his legs like 5 times and then he took like 3 steps to try to get past his now teammate Kyle Anderson and was called for a walk. He's hushing the crowd when they're up by 20 and then they end up losing the game. He like tries to deepen his voice to sound more intimidating after a win. And then of course you have the Popeyes comment from
Yeah,
a
that
few
was a little
days.
bit. That was a little bit like that felt almost like we that I don't think that's something that needs to be said to the media.
Yeah,
That feels like something that like you would tell a reporter like in a side conversation or something just behind closed doors. That doesn't
yeah.
feel like something that you would just say like just outright to a reporter. I don't but yeah, I mean that's him trying to be a leader, but I don't think that's the right way to
Yeah, no,
go about it.
it's not. And I think and again going back to Jimmy Butler, I think Jimmy Butler is an excellent judge of character and he sees who has that dog in him and who doesn't have that dog in him and I think like he's much happier in Miami because he's surrounded by players that do
Right.
have those dogs in him. Like,
Right.
you know, Hero's got that confidence in him that you want in a guy that's your sixth man and's got the swagger. And
Starter
Bam,
starter Tyler Hero.
Starler Tyler Hero now. Yeah, exactly. But you know, and again, he was still young, but something was there when Jimmy had G leaguers basically and beat the starting unit in Minnesota and has kind of
Yeah.
subtly talked trash about Cat. Or maybe not so subtly. I'm trying to think of one comment he made. There was one comment he made, I could have sworn, where he was talking about his tenure in Minnesota. Um,
I
but
praise the New York Knicks to an extent, and I'm talking good about the Philadelphia or Minnesota Timberwolves while wearing a Jimmy Butler shirt. Should I just give my fan card right now? Should I just return my fan card? Just be like, here, like,
nah,
have
it's
I have,
called.
am I going? Am I
Listen,
losing my mind? I don't know.
listen. It is a struggle that we all face where we try to be as media members open and transparent
Yep.
as we possibly can with no bias, and at the same time be diehard fans to our teams. And it's hard to differentiate between the two sometimes, because there's two wolves inside of you that are fighting in all of
Yeah.
us, and it's the media member, and it's the fan, and sometimes the fan has the upper
Right.
hand. But Matt, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, man. I
Thank
was
you for
happy
having
to
me, man. This was
happy.
awesome.
Yeah, I loved talking hoops. We'll definitely have to do it again. I love getting all the
Absolutely.
Vendetta members involved, and as we're doing this more, would love to, go through more updates as we get through the season and everything. It was nice to have a Heat fan on as well. Haven't had a Heat fan on before, which, I mean, we're only, I think this is the 7th episode of the podcast, so there has been a whole lot of other fan bases on here, but still, again, make sure you go follow Matt. It's at mph underscore 824 underscore. That is his Twitter. It's right down there at the bottom. Make sure you catch everything that he does for here at Vendetta, as well as doing some great stuff over at Hot Hot Hoops, which is, again, the SB Nation affiliate for the Miami Heat, and then a little bit, like you said, with Mountain West Conference connection. Yeah, so just make sure to go check out all that stuff, but obviously specifically check out the stuff he does here at Vendetta. That's personally my favorite stuff that he does,
First and
by the way.
foremost, baby.
Personally, my personal favorite stuff to read of his is here at Vendetta Sports Media. But Matt, again, thank you so much for joining. Had a blast. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel so you can know when the next episode of Quarters in Session drops, or when any of the other hundreds of videos that we've got going on drops. I've got some fun ideas for the NBA season, so stay tuned for all of that. But then, I'm not the only one working behind the scenes, so just stay tuned for the stuff that we've got coming to the YouTube in the future. And again, if you're watching us on Spotify, we appreciate you just as much as well, and give us that 5-star rating. Would greatly help the podcast out. But anyway, guys, again, thank you so much for watching. This is Jackson Law from Vendetta Sports Media signing off, and I will see you guys next time.